Good morning and welcome to today's discussion on understanding local job markets. And my name is Kyle Patrick Smith. My organization is HR Kyle, and I'm an author, consultant, and speaker, typically around the topics of human resources and leadership. I've included my LinkedIn profile in the chat if you'd like to connect with me there. You're also welcome to visit my website, hrkyle.com, where I talk about all the services that I offer. But again, I'm happy to be speaking with you today about this extremely important topic. As a matter of introduction, I'd like to talk about first, why is this topic important? Understanding your local job market. Because with this information, you're able to use it, and this is what we're going to talk about today, in order to approach your job search in a very efficient and effective manner. And it's going to eliminate a lot of frustration and anger and irritation if you start with this understanding first of your local job market and use that to drive your job search. And how does it impact job seekers? Because it impacts your success in, again, effectively and efficiently of finding a role, a job that's satisfactory to you and your family. Here's what we'll cover today. We're going to cover current trends in the job market, and we'll speak to this both on a national basis, but also how it relates to the local job market where you live. We're going to talk about key industries and opportunities, employer expectations and hiring practices. Again, these expectations often exist on a local level, and they do impact how you approach your job search. So it's important that you understand these. Also, strategies for job seekers. I want to provide you information today that you can leave this session with and immediately put into practice, because that's what we want to do. We want to see you take what you've gotten from this session today, put it into practice so you achieve a role, a job that you're happy with. So, factors influencing the job market. And it really is a changing employment landscape. As we've seen technology get more and more involved in job searching and recruiting and talent acquisition, we're finding that the market itself, the job market, changes much more rapidly. So let's talk about some of the things that influence the job market. One, economic trends and labor demand. Again, of course, on a national level, economic trends where the economy is doing well or it's doing poorly, of course, that trickles down to our local job markets. Labor demand. Again, if we're seeing shortages in labor or we're not seeing anything as far as activity, that's absolutely going to impact labor demand. Let's talk next. Political events. Whenever we see political changes, either at the national level, state level, or local level, that absolutely has an impact on the job market one way or another. Part of it is organizations anticipating how that political change is going to impact the job market, and they act accordingly. It can also be impacted by changes in the law, again, either at the federal, state, or local levels. Those type of things affect job markets in a good or a bad way. Technological advancements, of course. As we see technology such as artificial intelligence, for example, virtual reality come into play, that absolutely impacts how your local job market is going to change. For example, organizations are starting to use artificial intelligence a lot more in their recruiting activities and in screening candidates and so on. Virtual reality comes into play because we may well be using that as an employer as a first round of interviews. So you may not be meeting with an actual person. You may be going through a process that involves virtual reality. So again, there's how technological advancements on a broad scope impact the job market. Remote versus in-office work preferences. Again, we saw during COVID a big push to have more and more employees working remotely. But as we've gotten further removed from the impact that COVID had, we're seeing employers prefer to have employees spend more time in the office. So again, here's something that's happening outside of the scope of labor, that being the COVID pandemic, impacting the job market. Skills shortages and workforce gaps. Again, skills shortages can be created by any number of things. We've talked about a couple technological advances that are ahead of training. So you've got this AI technology, you've got virtual reality, but there aren't a lot of people that understand it, that have worked in it, that have been trained in it. That naturally creates a skill shortage. Those skill shortages trickle down to our local environments. I live in the state of Ohio. We saw this a few years back. When COVID really impacted our economy, one thing that we learned was we were relying as a country, that being the US, on too many outside organizations, meaning outside the US, to produce technology for us or technological components. And as a result, this sent a message to the United States that we needed to be able to build and develop more of these technological components within our country. And as a result, the state of Ohio has introduced some funds into the marketplace to encourage companies to build those facilities that make those technological components, to rather than build them in another country, build them in the state of Ohio. Well, as a result of that, we need to have people that are trained to work in those companies. So you can see how something, again, that's outside of the realm of the job market identifies a skill shortage and then a workforce gap. And as a result, we're seeing more people with those technological skills entering the state of Ohio in order to obtain those jobs. We're also seeing more training programs set up around the state of Ohio to train individuals to be able to fill those positions. But again, there's other factors influencing the job market. And in this case, it has influenced Ohio in a very positive manner. Major employers coming and going. We hear this every so often. This particular employer who was located in this particular state has now relocated to another state. In the earlier 2000s, we saw a lot of auto manufacturers, for example, who were based in other countries. And a couple that come to mind would be BMW, Volkswagen, as well as Hyundai, Kia. They had operations outside the US, but they decided that it made business sense to locate factories within the US. Those comings had a profound impact on those areas where those manufacturing facilities went to. By the same token, when we see organizations, regardless of what function they're in, when they locate out of an area, that immediately has an impact, because so often the organization doesn't take the employees who were working with them to the new location. So when they're leaving employees behind who are now looking for work. And wherever they're going, there's employees that are in those areas that are going to obtain new employment. So employers coming and going can have a very profound effect on the job market, and we've seen that. Investment in city services. In the particular city that I live in, they made a commitment about 20 years ago to make more of an investment in city services. So the streets and the fire protection and police patrols and all of those different things. They began to make an investment in that so that it was more appealing for employers to come to this area. And we've seen that as a result of that. I'm a perfect example of that. I have an opportunity to locate my business anywhere in the area, but I chose this city because of their investment in the city services. And of course, what that means is as employers come in, that creates more job opportunities. So again, there we're seeing the influences over the job market. The same holds true for investment in infrastructure. And again, I'll use myself as an example again. We had a number of different options as to where we could locate our corporate office. We chose this particular area because it's just off of our main street. Why? Because my city, again, 10 years ago, made an investment in the downtown area to encourage businesses to come there. So they improved the look of it. They improved the streets. They improved the water services, the electricity, the Wi-Fi services. They improved all of that infrastructure in this downtown to make it more appealing for businesses such as mine to locate themselves here. And there's plenty of parking. There's easy to come in and out of this area. So it became very appealing. So naturally, when businesses come in, that encourages them to hire from the local economy. So again, that investment in infrastructure by the city has encouraged more businesses to be located here. So let's understand a little bit more about your local industry trends and see how this stuff relates. And I've given you some examples already. Ask yourself, which industries are growing in your area? It's not a coincidence that if you look at certain areas, you see certain industries growing in that area. And I mentioned to you a few moments ago about auto manufacturers moving from offshore of the US into our country and the impact that has. Well, the other impact that it has is there's other related businesses that locate around those auto manufacturers. So it's anyone that's providing supplies of any sort to those. They're locating within that industry. It's related things. So part manufacturers and so on, they're located in that industry. So when you ask yourself what industries are growing, it's typically not a coincidence when you see one come in that there's others that follow. And we see the same thing in healthcare, and where a hospital comes in, and then pretty soon you've got the doctor's offices going in there, and then you've got the medical supply companies going in. So those industries now are growing in that area. Same way with technology. I mentioned about the IT manufacturing companies and those components coming in. As soon as those come in, then it makes more sense for other technology companies to come in around there. Manufacturing, finance. And as we look throughout the US, there are certain areas of the US and certain cities or metropolitan areas that clearly have a specialization around certain industries. There are certain parts of the country where you see a lot of insurance companies, for example, or you see this clustering of healthcare or this clustering of technology. I'm sure everyone on the call has heard of Silicon Valley. Well, that's technology. That's the growing industry in that area is technology. And it became known as Silicon Valley as a result. Then that trickles down from there as to what roles are in high demand. So again, you're getting this understanding of what's important in your area from an industry standpoint, and then that relates to roles. If we're talking about healthcare, it's natural to say, well, guess what? If there's healthcare industries moving in, that must mean that they need more nurses and they need more doctors and they need people who are trained in physical therapy and they need others that provide some sort of a medical care. So again, understanding what industries are there help you to understand the kind of roles that are needed. If we're talking about manufacturing, we're looking at what do they manufacture, and maybe that leads to more skilled trades, as I mentioned. If they're typically service provider companies, then more than likely that's going to require more customer service roles. But again, you're looking at what industries are growing and determining from there what type of roles that leads to. And on the flip side, from a local standpoint, we're looking at where the hiring slowdowns are happening. So in retail, we're seeing this across the country right now. There's a big decline in retail hiring. Why? Because more retailers are closing up. They're closing shop because of the growth of things such as Amazon and the ability to purchase online. So we're seeing retail as a country slow, and we're definitely seeing it locally where it's slowing down as well. Traditional media is another area. What am I speaking about there? Newspapers, magazines, and so on. So overall, we're seeing those shrink, but that is having an impact locally. So if you're someone that in your local environment, if you're looking to, as an employer, one that you might want to stay away from is a newspaper or a company that produces magazines, because that's an industry that's slowing down. Certain manufacturing sectors as well, they're beginning to slow down. Why? Because technology is coming into play and it's taking the roles of individuals doing those jobs. So then you're asking yourself, okay, if those jobs are being eliminated by technology, then maybe I need to consider getting into the technology that's being used to replace it. So again, you're looking at those local industry trends that you're seeing, and you're determining what roles are growing and where do we see slowdowns. So let's talk a little bit more just in general now about what employers are looking for. The sought after positions. So again, I alluded to a few of those in the previous slides, right? I talked about where we're seeing growth. That means there's going to be sought after positions that employers are looking for. That's where you want to focus your attention. If you need additional training or guidance in that, you're looking for those resources. Employers are always looking for those hard skills, the training, education, certifications. What does that mean to you? That means you're developing your resume to speak to those things. You're listing those hard skills. You're listing the training that you've got, the education, the certifications. You're making sure that those are on your resume. You're making sure that you share those when you're in an interview setting. Soft skills, these never go out of style. These are leadership, communication, collaboration. So are you the kind of person that when you go into a situation, you can be trusted, you can be counted on? You're a person that's going to make sure everyone is doing really well. Those are leadership characteristics. Communication. Are you an effective communicator? What does that mean? That means people are understanding what it is you're trying to convey to them, and you're effective at doing that. Collaboration, that's very simple. You are a person that works well with others. You work well with any number of different people from any number of different backgrounds and so on. We as employers are always looking for people that can work well with others, and that's collaboration. So let's talk about unemployment and labor force trends. And again, how this relates to you on a local level. Ask yourself, what is the unemployment rate? Is it rising or is it falling? And again, this helps you begin to determine, where am I going to devote my attention on a local job market? The area where I live, there are several different communities around here. Your local community may be the same. And it may be slow in the particular community you live, but maybe if you drive 20 miles east, west, north, or south, the unemployment rate looks very different. It's falling in those areas because they're short on employees. So do your research to understand, where is the unemployment rate rising, where is it falling, and that helps you determine where you're going to search for your next job. Labor force participation. So again, you're looking not at the overall population levels, but where are people actually looking for work? So in other words, you may live in a particular area, but you may be in some place, you may be going down the road a little bit, and there are people actually looking. Underemployment, working below qualifications. So that's a case of where an individual may have a lot of qualifications. They could do a certain job, but they're forced to be working under that. So you're looking for that in the data as well. The data may tell you that unemployment is low and a lot of people are working. But if those individuals are working in positions that are below where you would expect them to be, then again, they're working below qualifications. And that's not necessarily an area that you want to be searching for work for, because the same thing's going to happen to you. You're going to be qualified for a position at this level, but you may be forced to take a position down here because that's the nature of the job market in that particular local area. So let's talk about hiring practices and employer expectations. It's important to understand, what are employers prioritizing? Again, you're gathering this information from your local environment. So what are employers putting a premium on from a skill standpoint, whether those are hard or soft skills? Are you seeing more employees who are working remote, hybrid, or in office? Again, this is very unique to certain areas, because in some cases, the infrastructure around it may not support people necessarily all working in office. They may have to have remote or hybrid situations. The other thing that's important to understand is, what do local hiring processes look like? I've seen changes and differences, from market to market on hiring practices, depending on where you are. Some larger cities, they're more likely to lean towards Zoom as being a part of their hiring process, or some other technology where you're not meeting in person, so it's a virtual process. In smaller communities, they may prefer the one-on-one, the face-to-face type of interviews. But again, a lot of that can be determined by the local job market. Let's talk about wage and salary trends. We absolutely see differences in this on a federal, state, local level, and right down to city. So look at the data and find out how are local salaries in that particular area in your community? How are they comparing to national averages? And there can be a big discrepancy. We know in the state of Ohio, and especially with the area where I'm located, our salaries run at about 80 to 85% of what the national average is. But knowing that data allows you to go into an interview and pursue jobs with that knowledge. What we also know is we'll see differences in salaries, again, just driving up the road one way or the other for 20 minutes. So I live in Akron. We're about 35 minutes roughly from Cleveland, which is north of here. Salaries are much higher in Cleveland. So you have to ask yourself, I want to live in Akron, but do I mind driving 30 to 35 minutes so that I can make an additional 10% or 50%? So those are the questions you're asking yourself. Cost of living is absolutely very important in this decision on your local practices. So if you're deciding where you want to live, again, to my previous example, does it make sense to live in one city because cost of living is less and drive 30 minutes to another city that you work in because you're able to make more, or it makes it easier to make ends meet, as they say? You also want to look at data around wage growth because there you're looking at trends. And if you're seeing wage growth maybe on a national level that's trending upwards, so people are consistently making 3 to 5% more each year, or maybe it's in another community, but you're seeing your community where wages are flat or maybe even declining, that's a sign to you that you need to probably look at other areas because wages aren't keeping up with inflation. And we all know what that means. That means the same amount of pay isn't buying the same amount of resources. It's not paying as much on your house. It's not covering the transportation, the healthcare, the groceries, and all of those things. So that's what that means in very practical sense. Your wages aren't buying as much as they used to. Ask yourself too, is the compensation is it competitive, is what I mean to say. And please, when you look at this number, be sure that you're looking at any kind of bonuses you may be eligible for, the benefits, how much those cost you, so your healthcare costs, as well as work-life balance perks. So bonus, that's pretty easy to understand. If we reach a certain threshold, you receive this much additional pay. Same way with benefits. You can provide healthcare and dental and vision benefits for your entire family. Here's how much it costs at this company versus here's how much it costs here. So you want to ask those questions because that can absolutely differ based upon not only the industry, but so certainly the local government in the local area, the local region that you live in. A great example of that is we know in healthcare, those organizations that are in healthcare typically offer a better quality benefit at less cost than non-healthcare industries. So that's something to consider as well when you're looking at industries. Maybe you're qualified to be in healthcare industry, and that's one you want to go to. And it also has the added benefit that their benefits are better, their healthcare benefits are better, and they cost you less. Work-life balance perks is also another one to consider. Say, for example, it's a job 5 days a week, but they only require you to come to the office 2 days a week. Well, think about how much money that may be saving you in transportation costs, in childcare costs, and all these other things that come into play when you're going into an office 2 days versus 5. Those perks have value. Excuse me. Diversity, equity, inclusion in hiring. Please take a look at this. As an immigrant, this is absolutely important to you. So please don't lose sight of this. When we in the U.S. talk about diversity and equity and inclusion, we're typically speaking about people who are non-white. Okay, just to make sure there's an understanding here. So you have to ask yourself, is that a priority in your community? Do you see the community as a whole putting a priority in making sure that we're encouraging other people to participate in this community? Other people, meaning other people other than the predominant, which would typically be white. So are you seeing that being a priority in the community? because what we see from a community standpoint typically trickles down to our businesses, to our manufacturing, to those employers. We see that. Second question is, does your community embrace it? Do they embrace the diversity that exists within that community? How do you know that? You look at the things that are celebrated. The community I live, for example, we celebrate all the different nationalities that exist in our community here, and it's a good example of what you call a melting pot. So what I mean is of that, we have a lot of different people from a lot of different countries and nationalities and backgrounds coming into this community, and we celebrate it. We celebrate it through festivals and other acknowledgments and recognition and celebrations that take place throughout the year. So we know in this community it's something that we embrace, and it's a big reason why I chose to be an employer here. And it would be a big reason why I would choose to be an employee for an organization in this area. You need to ask yourself too, excuse me, are there resources in the area that support diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, I'll give you another example. In Akron, for example, we know it's well supported because there's an organization called the International Institute of Akron. And their mission, we help refugees and immigrants achieve an empowered life with dignity, connection, and belonging. If you're an immigrant in this area that I live in, I'm absolutely, the first connection I'm going to make for you is to the International Institute of Akron. They are a resource for you in so many ways. Look in your area, in your community, and see what resources are out there that are available to you as an immigrant. And through a little bit of research, you might be surprised at what you come across. And again, more importantly, what they can offer to you. Please take advantage of these resources. Having been affiliated with these organizations, and I continue to be, I can assure you, we want you to take advantage of these resources. We're reaching out into the community to encourage more and more people to take advantage. So please, if you do the research and you find this in your area, please take advantage of it because we want you to. What industries are focusing on it or not? Are there industries in your area that are focusing on becoming more diverse and equitable and inclusive? Those are the ones you want to focus on because you're going to be received with open arms. And I'll give you an example from my personal experience in the professional world. So an employer I worked for several years ago, we had a large number of people from Indonesia in that area. Well, we were a very welcoming environment. We celebrated that as part of our community, our workforce community. And so it was a very pleasant place for you to go to if you were from those areas, or even beyond that, if you were from other areas and you had emigrated to the United States, because we were very open to that and very welcoming. And it was a very encouraging, positive environment. So look for industries that focus on that and companies that focus on that. Again, through a little bit of research, you might be surprised at what you learn. So definitely look at the workforce demographics of your local area as well. What's the average age of the workforce? And what that's telling you is, and we all know this, right? As employees get older, they're looking forward to retiring. Well, we as employers are looking and saying, okay, if I'm losing this many people, I need to be bringing in this many people. So you're looking in the community to say, where are some communities where we're seeing a lot of employees that are either close to retiring or soon will be? And those are the communities where you want to focus into entering, because those opportunities are there. And we as employers are looking for people to come in behind the ones that retire. And ask yourself too, are younger professionals staying or relocating? Another initiative that I'm involved with here in the state of Ohio is something called Choose Ohio First. And our focus is to keep younger professionals in the state of Ohio because we know, they're vibrant. They have new ideas. We want them to stay. They're the future leaders of these organizations that we represent. So if you're in a community or an area where you see younger professionals leaving, that's not a good sign, because that means you're losing out on that growth, those future leaders, those future opportunities that these younger professionals just automatically bring into your environment. So look for communities where you're seeing younger professionals staying or they're relocating into, because that tells you that's an area of growth and opportunity and vibrancy. Here's another big one. Look at where other immigrants are coming and going. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier with the employer that I worked for, because interesting, I mean, no surprise, the more immigrants that we had that joined our organization, the more that came to us because they knew we were an immigrant positive employer. Well, workforce in general is that same way. One of the cities that's near here, there is a large population of immigrants from Nepal. And they're coming into this area. So that tells you that it's an area that's friendly to especially Nepalis, but also all other immigrants. So that's a good sign. That tells you that there's jobs here. They're well received. They're well respected. It's a welcoming environment. On the flip side, if you're seeing cities or areas where immigrants are leaving and they're getting out of, that's not a good sign. Obviously, that's not an area you want to be going into, because obviously it's not immigrant friendly for some reason. Look at where your immigrant friends are getting hired, those that you know or that you're familiar with. That tells you, again, those are friendly environments for you to pursue. Let's talk about some job search and recruiting trends. Clearly, in certain areas, there's favored job boards and platforms in that particular area. And what I mean there is more on the technology side. So certain areas, excuse me, certain job boards, certain methods for recruiting work better than others. Maybe in your particular area, a lot of employers like to do job fairs where they're meeting people in person, and that's one of the best ways to get jobs. Maybe in your area, they encourage people to just go to that employer directly and contact them directly by phone, by email to obtain employment. Maybe it's an area where they prefer to use job boards and those other things. But again, understanding the nuances of your particular area and what works best to get a job, very important to do that. Look for community job search groups. A lot of times these will be sponsored by an International Institute of Akron or a local church or some other nonprofit, and they meet on a regular basis, or they share job openings through their network, and that's a network that you can join and be a part of. So look for that as well in your community, because I see a lot of these that come up, and they're specific to certain communities or certain areas or certain groups of people, and they exist. And they're very beneficial to the members to learn about jobs and get a leg up on getting job opportunities and getting those interviews. Look at the staffing agencies and recruiters that are prominent in your area. There's some big names on a national basis, but a lot of times when we take it down to the local community, there may be a particular organization that maybe is just one shop. It has one office, but it has a very good foothold in that particular community. Well, those are the kind of agencies that you want to check into. You want to contact them and let them know that you're looking for work, and if they can help you with that. Same way with recruiters. There's certain recruiters that have a strong footprint in a certain area. I would fall into that area. I have a strong footprint in Northeast Ohio area. So if you're looking for a job here, it would be a great idea for you and I to connect on that purpose. If you're in Northwest Indiana, probably I wouldn't have nearly the reach that I would have. So that's where recruiters come into play. Look too for the roles that are getting filled quickly, right? Because those are the ones that obviously people need to have filled. So what are those roles? What do you need to do to pursue that? What do you need to do to be qualified for that? On the flip side, as we've talked about, what are the roles where people are struggling for talent? It's those jobs that you see up and you're thinking, gosh, they seem to always need people. Well, guess what? That's an industry or an area that you want to focus on. And, the job seekers to job, that ratio. You're in an area that needs a lot of these people, but there's only this many. Well, guess what? You want to be part of that pool. And again, doing your research in your immediate area. And it can be as simple as, in this area, we're well covered for that. But if you go 20 minutes this direction, there's a shortage. There's more jobs and job seekers. And the last one there that I have on this list, the power of networking. And I really want to talk about that because I know that's something that Resilient Immigrant talks about a lot. And there's a good reason why they do, because networking is one of your really secret, hidden tools that are going to put you ahead. So let's talk about networking with a little bit more detail to give you some guidance. So how does networking influence hiring decisions? I'm going to speak personally. So I've hired for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs throughout my career. And one of the ways that I got really good at it is by meeting people and getting to know people in all different types of jobs. And what I did was I remembered those people that I thought were really qualified and I really had a good connection with. And you know what happened? When I had openings for jobs that they were qualified for, those were the individuals that I reached out to first. I may not have even posted the job, and many times I wouldn't, because I would already have 5, 6, 7 people that I had spoken to, that I'd had a chance to get to know a little bit. They had gotten to know me and gotten to know my organization. Well, those are the first people I reached out to when I had a job opening. That is the true power of networking. And I know a lot of people in hiring positions, heads of organizations, company presidents, HR people, all the above, that's how they get their best hires, is through networking. And reason being, we get to know you better. You also get to know us better. So you're walking into a situation that you know the organization, you know who you're going to be working for. So it becomes a win-win from that standpoint. Best places to network, any sort of professional organizations. So if you're a person who is in a particular area, healthcare, for example, well, you want to look for networking opportunities that are healthcare oriented, and those exist, or whatever that area is. Look for those professional organizations in your area. HR has them. One of our national ones that carries down to the local level is an organization called SHRM, SHRM, which stands for Society of Human Resource Management. So guess who I'm going to meet there? I'm going to meet fellow HR professionals. So that's one of the professional organizations I want to be a part of. And there's all kinds of professional organizations that exist on a national, state, and local level. Well, those are wonderful places for you to network with like professionals. LinkedIn, if you're not using LinkedIn, please take some training on that. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, but I want you to get trained and familiar with that, because LinkedIn can be an extremely valuable tool for you to network. Industry events. There's consistently conferences and other types of industry events that you can attend as a guest or be a part of or read up on. Wonderful way to meet people that would consider you for roles in the future. Your local chamber of commerce. Every city in the U.S. seems to have a very active chamber of commerce. Check into that. See what networking opportunities they may be offering. Maybe it's lunch and learn, or they have an after hours event where people meet at a restaurant. Look for those type of things. Those are wonderful ways to meet people who are in a position to consider you for jobs. And I've listed on here, and I even bolded it so it was standing out in yellow. Resilient Immigrant is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful place to network, because you can connect with people like myself. And I've got a lot of other individuals that I've been fortunate to meet through my participation in Resilient Immigrant as well. And I consider them valuable members now of my network. You can absolutely do the same. So as you're following Resilient Immigrant and you're seeing different people that represent that organization or are a part of it, such as myself, connect with us. We want you to. We want to make those connections, and we want to network, and we want to be able to help each other, because that's what networking is about. So I've talked a lot about how to build and leverage your professional network, but let's talk about, and I get this, talk about the challenges and the opportunities. I want to go through the challenges first. Confidence. Gosh, I got to go to this networking event. I don't know. Do I even belong there? Here's what I can tell you. There's at least 50% of the people that are thinking all the same thoughts that you have. I don't want to do this. I hate being there. I don't know if I belong. I'm not qualified. I'm not smart enough. All these other things. At least 50% are thinking that. Go in there with that attitude. You have as much to offer or more as anybody in that room. You're just as qualified and just as worthy to be there as anyone. Fear is the other thing. Fear of what? Rejection, of being treated a certain way. I can guarantee you, I've rarely ever seen anyone be disrespected, mistreated, rejected in any sort of way at a networking event. It's highly unlikely it's going to happen. The worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to come across somebody that's more shy and reserved than you are, and they're maybe not all that talkative. They're not rejecting you. They're just simply very shy and very awkward, and they're not sure if they want to be there either. But there's really nothing to be afraid of. There's no harm that's going to come to you by going to a networking event. The other thing that I hear, especially from my immigrant friends, and if you know anything about me, I have a lot of friends who are immigrants. And they share with me their language concerns. And the one thing that I tell them is, I don't have an issue with that. They're more critical of their language skills, their English language skills, than they ever need to be. Let me repeat that. My immigrant friends, and there are many of them, are much more critical of their English language skills than they need to be. They're easy to understand. I'm understanding what they say. Do they sometimes have to repeat something? Yes. But you know what? As a native English speaker, there are sometimes I need to repeat what I've just said. So don't take that as being that it's hard to understand you. Sometimes we as humans just don't hear very well. So these language concerns, I can assure you, it's overblown. You're being too self-critical. You don't need to be. Very few people you will encounter, and I can't imagine anybody would be critical of your language skills at a networking event. More than likely, what you're going to encounter is people that are very receptive to that, and they're curious, and you can teach them, and you can enlighten them on where you've come from and the experiences that you have and who you are and what you're about and what you represent. That's more of what you're going to encounter, is people that are receptive and enjoy talking with you because you come from a different place, literally and figuratively. And that's interesting to people in a networking setting. So they're going to value you being there. So here's where the opportunities come in. I mentioned a few. There's in typical communities, in typical groups and areas and so on, there's a number of networking events that take place all the time. Look for those through your social media, right? Your Facebook, your local Facebook groups and so on. There's always, it seems like, a networking event going on somewhere. Look for groups that are specifically built around networking. I mentioned the Chamber of Commerce. That's a great example. They specifically exist for everyone to network. And there's all kinds of other places around that are specifically exist for networking. I'm going to give you another one. It's called Alignable. Look it up online. That is specifically intended for networking. You know another one? LinkedIn. That is specifically created for people to connect with other professionals. Please use those. We want you to. Even built within the LinkedIn of the world and Facebook and all these other ones, there are networking groups that are built within those platforms. Look for those groups and connect with them. Be a part of those groups. Be active participants in those. Toastmasters. I don't know if you've heard of Toastmasters. As an immigrant, you may not have. It's existed in the U.S. for a long time. It's a national organization, but there are chapters that exist on a local level. What they're intended to do is help people become better public speakers, whether that's in one-on-one settings or group settings. And I know a lot of people from a lot of different places that have had a lot of success with Toastmasters. I've worked with employers where we encourage people who wanted to move up into leadership positions. We encourage them to become members of Toastmasters. So it is truly this melting pot of all of these different people from all these different backgrounds that know and want to get better at public speaking and being out there. It's the perfect place to go if you're lacking some confidence in your public speaking abilities, because one, you're going to be surrounded by a lot of other people that feel the same way, and two, they're members of that group that can help you get better. That's the whole point of them, of meeting, is helping each other get better in public speaking. Workforce initiatives, depending on your area, there may be initiatives that are being sponsored by the state or local government around networking and bringing people together and getting people to know each other. Look for those, do some research on those. Again, check through some of your existing contacts. They can point you to that. And then there, again, I've talked about this a couple of times. Many, many, many communities have immigrant-friendly organizations that exist for the sole purpose of helping you as an immigrant become acclimated, become assimilated, join this community, be a thriving, happy, successful member of the community. There are many of them out there, and they will welcome you with open arms. Resilient Immigrant is one example. If you've had a positive experience here, I can assure you there's a bunch of other ones at your local level that will accept you the same way, and they're there to help you in any way that they can. So there's a lot of opportunities on that networking side that you can work on. Let's talk a little bit more because I promised you to give you some things to take away from here today. So I want to talk about how to stand out in person. So you're going to a networking event. Here's some strategies to make you stand out and make sure it works for you. One, do your research in advance. See if you can find out who's going to be there, like what companies, what particular people. A lot of times they'll put out a list of who is going to be part of that networking event, or at least you have some idea. So do your research in advance. Have a 15-second introduction when you meet people. So when you walk up to someone, you reach your hand out to shake their hand and you say, "Hi, my name's Kyle Smith. I'm founder and CEO of HR Kyle. We're a company that helps individuals reach their fullest potential in the workforce. We also work with organizations to do that. And I'm just here today to meet other like-minded professionals and see where we might be able to help each other." There's my 15-minute introduction. Come up with one that's yours. And again, you can see I spoke to the who, the what, and the why. And notice too, and I've got it a little bit further down the list here, but notice how when I introduced the why I'm there and what I do, I made it about that other person, because you'll be much better received in that setting if you approach it that way versus saying, "Hi, my name is Jim and I'm here to find a job." Okay, great, Jim, but what can you do for me? So maybe another way is, "Hi, my name is Jim and I'm here. I've been looking for my next opportunity and I'm looking for organizations where I can really make a difference and are looking for people with my kind of skills and ability." And see how that opens the door up to further conversation. Well, Jim, tell me a little bit more about what you do. And then there's where the conversation goes. So again, you're approaching it the who, what, and why, but how can you help them? Also, I highly encourage you to have business cards made up. You might say, "Well, gosh, as a job seeker, why would I have business cards made up?" Because it's something that you can hand to people. It has your name, your full contact information on it, and it's much easier for them to remember who you are. And these are a stack of business cards I collected from a recent event. Now I can easily remember everybody that I met, because that's what you want to have happen. When you leave that event, you want people to remember you versus, "Gosh, I know I met this person who I can't," and they've got nothing they can reference. By the same token, you need to get business cards, because you know why? It helps you remember the person's name. And we all do this, right? We meet somebody, we're kind of nervous and we forget their name. Well, here's your cheat sheet. They're standing right in front of you. There's their business card, and you just glimpse down it, and there you see their name again, because people like you to use their name. When you're done talking, you can say, "Well, thank you, Jim. It was such a pleasure." People love to hear that. But what it also does, it allows you to follow up afterwards, because all of your networking events, when you get those business cards, follow up afterwards with a thank you for meeting them, finding out how you can help them and what you can do for them. And it's a wonderful way to follow up. Know the dress code. I say this because you don't want to go in overdressed. You don't want to go in underdressed. Overdressed gets you a lot of times some unnecessary attention, and it may distract from you being remembered for the right reasons. On the flip side, if you underdress, obviously that's not going to make a good impression. So understand the nature of the event and the dress code if you can find it out. If worse comes to worse, it never hurts to wear a shirt and tie if you're a man, or a business outfit for you as a woman. That will always be a safe bet. But if it's an event that's intended to be a little bit more casual, you wouldn't want to come in there too overdressed. You'd want to be more on the business casual side. And also have goals. What do I mean by this? Especially if you're a nervous person about going to these events and you're still unsure, maybe your goal is, "I'm going to speak to 3 people." And that's all you have to do. You're going to go into that networking session. You're going to speak to your 3 people. And as soon as you do, you're going to leave. But you know what? That's 3 people you didn't know before you stepped in. And that's your goal. Or maybe your goal is, "I'm going to, make a full circle around the room and I'm going to meet people from this business or this industry," or whatever. Whatever it is, have your goals going in. That way, it's been a success when you leave. And then, as I mentioned there at the bottom, and you're doing this through your business cards, you're following up. You're dropping that person a quick email and letting them know how much of a pleasure it was to meet them. Give them a little bit of a reminder about who you are and ask them where you can help them. Online looks a little bit different, but I've said on here, leverage LinkedIn. Make sure that you're optimizing your LinkedIn. What does that mean? Look for a training to help you optimize your LinkedIn. But The best way to do that is have a very professional picture, have a good headline that tells who you are and what you're about, have a good about section that describes your background a little bit more. Be sure to give a high level overview of the different experience that you have through your jobs and so on, and include your education on there. So have a profile that when someone looks at it at a glance, they can have a pretty good picture of who you are as a person. Know who you are and what you're looking for. Again, that's going to impact this online interactions that you have. Let people know about you professionally. And it's okay too to let them know a little bit about you personally, the things you enjoy doing, the things that you're passionate about, things that are important to you. We as employers, we like to know that, especially if we're networking, we're just getting to know people. That's really helpful. And again, whether it's online or offline, let people know how you can help them. Find out from them. I saw your profile here and I'm really impressed with what you do. Is there a way that I can help you in your business, or a way that my skills might be useful to you in some way? Approach it that way. You'll be much more likely to be received positively. Also, along that same line, look where you can contribute. Sharing articles, sharing information to your network, posting things that you think might be useful to them. That's the way you demonstrate your value and you catch people's attention. And then finally, there's a lot of groups on places like LinkedIn that are specific maybe to your interest area, your job area, your location. Join those groups and look at how you can contribute in a positive manner to other members of it. So I want to wrap today's discussion up with a few key takeaways. One, current job market trends. Understand those. Learn about the growing industries, the hiring practices, employer expectations. Number two, skills and experience matter. Identify those areas where in-demand skills, or the organizations are looking for those, where they're looking for certain certifications and certain soft skills that the employers in that area, whether it's your local area or somewhere down around that area, that they're looking for that. And I spent a lot of time on this, but it's important. Networking is your friend in the local job market. We talked about how it can be useful to you to locate jobs, but it's also useful to you to understand the job market better. The individuals that you interact with are going to be happy to share information about that local job area. So you can ask them the questions about who are the big employers, who seems to be hiring right now, what do they seem to be looking for? Getting that information from them to make your job search more effectively. And then your strategies. We talked about that, using the job boards, using recruiters, immigrant-friendly organizations to find your opportunities. Use those. Find out what the prominent ones in your area, the most effective ones in your particular area, and focus your attention on that. And a little bit of research can go a long way in that. Again, networking can be the key there as well. Diversity and inclusion. Please don't lose sight of this. As an immigrant, this needs to be front and center on your mind. Who are the organizations that embrace these initiatives, that are saying we want to have people that look and talk and act like you join our organization? Be sure that you understand that. You'll be well received there. And what it also means is you're more likely to get ahead in those organizations. But it sure will be easy to be successful in that type of organization if you know that you're welcome with open arms. In adapting to the workforce, that's the last one I've got here. Understanding the workplace cultures, the communication styles, and career advancement paths. Do your research to understand what that looks like for your area and for the industries that are prominent in your area. Can you stay in that immediate area and grow as a professional and get promoted and do these other things? Or do you reach a certain point in that area, and in order to get ahead, you've got to go to the big city that's down the road to get further ahead? But again, understanding the local job market and understanding the industries that exist there will provide you that level of information. So one more thing, take action. I want each and every one of you who's listening to this talk today, take something that we've talked about today. I'm going to ask you that question here in a moment, but take action on this. Build your network, enhance your skills, and confidently pursue those opportunities. You have as much right to pursue your dreams and the things that you want to do with your career and your life as anyone else. And we say this all the time, but it's true. The United States of America is a land of opportunity. Please Take advantage of the resources that are available, the people that want to help you and work with you and want to see you successful. Partner with them, get out there, make your name be known, and pursue your dreams. You have every right to do that. In fact, you have a responsibility to do it, especially if you sat through this presentation. So I want to hear about every one of you that's listened today is seizing the moment and going after what you want and what you deserve. So this isn't a live performance, but I still want you to do this because it helps you remember what it is we talked about today, and it helps you easily put things in action. So we'll take a moment on this slide and we'll say, what's one thing, and it can be more, but what's one thing you're going to take away from today that you're going to use immediately? So we'll take a moment for you to think about that and write that down. And if it's more, please, if it's 10 things, I'm good with that. But I want you to have at least one that you're going to put in action immediately when you stop the video today. Think about what that is. And we find that by writing it down, it makes us more accountable to doing it. It makes us more likely to doing it. So I mentioned several times during the talk today about networking and connecting. Well, here's your opportunity. I would love to connect with each and every one of you that's listened to this presentation today. My name's Kyle Patrick Smith. Excuse me. My organization is HR Kyle. You're welcome to do a good Google search on that and look us up and see what we do here. The website is hrkyle.com. There's a lot of resources that I provide on looking for jobs and job searching and interviewing effectively and so on. Those are all free. They're available to you online, either through my website or through a Google search. And please, definitely, let's connect out on LinkedIn. And that's how we get to know other people. So maybe I know someone that you should know in order to pursue your next opportunity. Well, the only way we're going to reach that point is if you and I connect on LinkedIn first, and then we work from there. So please send me your LinkedIn connection request. I'll look forward to connecting with you and seeing how we can help each other be more successful. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you and hopefully passing on some knowledge that you can put into practice immediately and ultimately achieve the dreams and the aspirations that you want and that you deserve. So thank you.